am in the kitchen today because I want to introduce you to a new person that you're going to be seeing right here on Oklahoma Gardening. This is Christi Evans, who is an extension specialist, and you are a registered dietitian, correct?
Yes, I'm a registered dietitian.
So we have convinced her to start doing our cooking segments for us here on Oklahoma Gardening, and we're so excited to have you. So thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about your background with extension and also, your field of expertise?
Yeah, so I originally started with OSU Extension back in 2007. And then I left after about 3 to 4 years and went and did some other things as a registered dietitian. I worked as consulting for a while and worked for the WIC program. But then I came back, and I originally was, when I came back, with the Community Nutrition Education Program in Oklahoma County.
And we actually knew each other back in the day when I was in Canadian County.
We worked together then. But then I went to work as in Cleveland County after that as an FCS educator.
Okay, and now you're up here on Stillwater campus, so glad to have you up here. And it looks like you're ready to start cooking already. So what do we have here?
Well, I have some vegetable scraps. Usually when people make a vegetable broth, they will have about 8 cups of vegetables that they plan to make a broth with. But you don't have to cut up a whole piece of vegetable in order to make broth. You can make it with scraps instead of just throwing them away or.
This would go to my compost pile, honestly. That's what it looks like it's for. But
well, yeah, and I mean, putting it in a compost pile, at least you'd be putting it to use besides putting it in the trash can. But you can keep that and make your broth. It'll save you save you a little bit of money.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
So is there a recipe to making a vegetable broth, or
you can find a recipe, but it's really not complicated at all.
Okay.
You just start with what vegetables you've got. Pretty much. I mean, there's some vegetables that you might want to stay away from, but you just want to probably do about equal parts of water to your vegetables.
Let's go ahead and go through this process then.
Okay, yeah, so one other thing to mention is if you don't want to make a broth right away, like we're going to do today, you could take your vegetable scraps and put them in a bag, labeled, and put it in the freezer until you have the amount that you want to make. If you want to make a large amount of broth, or a freezer safe container like that with a lid. Okay. But we're just going to make a smaller amount and just make our broth.
Okay, excellent.
So what we've got is some onion skins. I'm going to go ahead and.
So the actual skins that you wouldn't be utilizing otherwise, or
right? Yeah. And then we've got some ends of some bell peppers, and then we've got some celery tops and ends, and. All of these vegetables are perfectly fine. They're just,
So they're going to add basically the flavoring to the water that we put in. Then
right.
So.
Yep. And then we've got peels from carrots.
Okay.
But there is one thing, that when you plan to use your carrot peels and the ends and all that, you really need to make sure that you do wash the vegetables and scrub them. So, because if you're putting peels in there, you don't want that dirt. Or
you don't want any extra minerals in there, right? Okay.
Right. And then herbs. We've got some stems from some herbs. So typically people just take the leaves off or throw the rest away. But those are great in broth too. Gives it a nice flavor.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So really any herbs will work on that too, right?
Right, yeah, yeah. Whatever herbs, that you have, or if you have certain, ones that you like to season your broth with, they'd be great. Also by using herbs, then you're going to be less likely to want to add salt. So
gotcha.
That's a good thing. But yeah, so once that's added in the pot, then we'll just pour in our water. And again, you wanted to have it pretty, like equal parts, but a good idea is so that you want the vegetables to be covered in water. Okay. Yeah. If you use a little bit less water, it's just going to make it a little bit more concentrated. Or if you add more, then it's going to not be as flavorful. So kind of is again another personal preference on how you.
So could you err on the side of it being more concentrated, and then in the dish, obviously you could probably always add more water to it later?
You could, but you really have to keep an eye on it then to make sure, as it boils.
When you're making it. Okay. Yeah. So now this is a broth, correct?
Right.
So what is the difference? Like I hear, vegetable broth and vegetable stock or chicken stock. What is the difference between those things?
Okay. So now when we're talking vegetables, there really is no difference between a stock and a broth.
Okay.
But with meat and poultry, a stock is made from the bones. So, you boil the bones, and that's a stock.
Okay.
Then a broth is made by the meat. So if you
okay.
have the meat, and but sometimes people will talk about, vegetable broth or vegetable stock. It's basically
because they also say bone broth, right? Don't
Right.
they? So
And
that would technically be a stock, though.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Bone broth is just stock with a fancier name, I guess.
Okay.
Same thing. But yeah, once you get all of the vegetables and the water in your pot, then you'll just turn it to medium-high heat until it boils. Then we'll just put the lid on it and let it simmer for about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, so it needs to really kind of get those flavors out of those vegetables for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give it time to,
So you mentioned there are some maybe vegetables that we shouldn't be using. What are some things that we should not add to our vegetable stock?
Something like cauliflower or broccoli, you really wouldn't want to add, or Brussels sprouts.
Okay.
Brussels sprouts especially would give it a really bitter, bitter flavor to it.
Okay.
So those would be ones to stay away from. And of course, like lettuce, anything with leaves, that you really, it's going to cook down and be,
Okay.
not really hold the shape or hold any. So
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, so now that our broth has been boiling for it's been almost an hour, we'll go ahead and turn it off.
Okay.
And
I love the color that it's taken on now.
it is. It's gotten really pretty, a pretty color. Okay, we'll just set the lid to the side. And at this point, you've got options. You can take the pot, put a strainer over a bowl, and then just dump the contents of the pot into that strainer.
Okay.
So that way you're straining off the liquid. But what I like to do is use a skimmer.
Okay.
I think this way it's a little bit easier, but we can just take this and we'll just scoop out our vegetables. Yeah, thank you. We'll just scoop out our vegetables and put these into the bowl.
Okay.
And then I have a question for you, Casey.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned using your scraps as a compost,
Right,
for compost.
right, yeah.
Well, could you still use them as a compost?
Yes, absolutely, of course. So you might want to wait till it cools off just a little bit. It's not boiling anymore, but otherwise, yeah, by the time you get that out to the garden, it's still good organic matter that's going to continue to break down and feed the soil for the garden. So absolutely.
Good.
So really, you've gotten 3 purposes out of it, right?
Well, that's what I was thinking too. These vegetables have really served their purpose
Absolutely.
at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so once you get all of your vegetables out of your broth, then you can store it. If you're going to use it within 3 to 4 days, you could go ahead and put it in the refrigerator. I like these types of bowls. This kind of bowl, actually, it would work in the refrigerator or the freezer.
Okay.
So 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator, or if you're not going to use it within that amount of time, then put it in the freezer, and it can store in the freezer for 3 to 4 months.
Okay. We just want to make sure it's labeled, right?
Just make sure it's labeled, yeah, because you don't, you want to make sure that you know what you've got in
Right.
there. Also, it needs to be a freezer-safe container if it's going in the freezer. Or you could store it in a mason jar. A wide-mouth mason jar would work great to put it in the refrigerator or the freezer.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Christi, for this recipe, and we look forward to many more this season.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks. For this recipe and more like it, scan this QR code. We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.